Kenish Harmon is a painter, an illustrator, and a storyteller who wants to use her art to initiate conversations about current issues around the world. I talk one-on-one with Ms. Harmon for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Kenish Harmon, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I appreciate it greatly. Needless to say, you are a painter, an illustrator, and of course, a storyteller. And you say that on your website that you're a little quirky as well. According to your website, you aim to address identity, diversity, and controversy with vibrant artistry and open dialogue. You also say that you strive to use the many gifts that God has given you to promote change, initiate conversation, and ultimately to please Him, of course. So tell me, Ms. Kenish, how are you crafting your life right now using your art?
I am crafting my life using my art in a way that I'm trying to live as authentically to myself as possible. I feel like growing up, you go through those motions of, you go to school, go to work, start a family, different things like that. And as fulfilling as those things are, I feel like my artistry is the gift that God has given me. So I want to make sure that I'm using those gifts in the way that He has called me to use them. So that means having conversation, even conversations that can be somewhat rebellious. My faith is important to me. So for me, Jesus was a little bit rebellious. Sometimes He wasn't out here just starting stuff, but if He had to shake a little bit of tables, He shook some tables to have some conversations. And it was everything I do, no matter how hard the conversations may be, and this is again both within my artwork and within just my life in general, like my career, my jobs, the way I interact with my friends and family. I want to do all things in truth and in love, and I feel like they have to be in tandem.
Oh yes, I believe that. I understand that completely. What is the biggest difference about art from when you started to write now?
So when I first started in art, it was just more so about being technical and artistic. Like, I got my roots at Charleston County School of the Arts.
Yes.
And by far one of the best experiences I've ever had. It taught me a lot. I love being around all the art kids, but I feel like that gave me my foundation of art. As far as technique goes,
right.
Life is what gave me my style of art, and it's what gave me the conversations around art and how I wanted to use those techniques. So I think whereas I was focused more on creating nice looking pictures where there is a place for that, and that is perfectly fine if that's where you are. But for me, I like my pretty pictures and my techniques to actually start conversation, to go a step further, I would say.
What conversation has allowed your art to go a step further?
Art is an outlet and for therapy for me. And I feel like if it's therapy for me, it has to be therapeutic for some others. There's just some conversations that are too large, I will say, particularly in America and particularly as a Black woman in Charleston, South Carolina. I have had my share of experiences. My first series where I feel like I really started having conversations with my artwork is called Negrescence. And that is based on William E. Cross Jr.'s theory of the Black identity theory and what it means to become Black. And I kind of felt like this resonated with me. One, because I was able to do this in a comic style, which is something that I love. But two, because I loved this high school I went to, and then I ended up going to an HBCU. And I'll be honest, as a freshman, I was like, I don't want to go to this school. I'm not going to learn. I had a bias. I had an internal bias that I didn't realize that I had. And it was after going to that school and then going to Howard for graduate school and learning to have like friends from so many backgrounds and so many, like, because I never lost my SOA friends. I just gained a whole other group of friends and other conversations. And I'm like, I feel like I'm in a place where I can have conversations about empathy because I've lived it and I've seen people who don't have it. I can have conversations about what it's like living in the South. I've experienced it. I can have conversations about, you know, struggling, about being a millennial, about not having enough financially, about racism, about different facets from different angles, even from some of my own friends, their life experiences and what they told me, from even some of them from other countries and whatnot. I like being that storyteller, both from my experiences and from other people's experiences as well.
What other people's experiences, Ms. Harmon, has allowed your art to be more expressive?
So, first of all, I would say that the first piece that I did that was just straight up someone else's experience and expression um, came from, I think I was in college, undergrad, and I watched the Trayvon Martin trial all the way through. And I still had some, I guess you could say, some faith in things. It's like, no, things always like it'll work out, it'll work out, it'll work out. And it did not, in that sense, at least not in the way that I felt like it should at the time. And I ended up creating a piece. I didn't plan it, didn't practice it, none of those things. I just started painting. And I wanted to paint as a response to it. And I didn't finish the piece. I didn't finish the piece until um, I want to say this is Mike Brown happened. And I finished the piece then. And it's a piece called Broken America. So I started really painting about those experiences that, you know, I haven't experienced anything even remotely as significant as that, but I can relate and I can see how, particularly with our young men and everything, for Black men, the experiences that they might have to deal with and whatnot. And after doing my Negrescent series, because I started to complete it around this time, I really started to look at not just the experience of African Americans, but also the experience of different Black and Brown people as well. I've done some pieces centered around Ukraine. I've done some pieces around um, what's happening in Gaza. I've been trying to really emphasize on my life experience and the life experience of others, and particularly underrepresented voices that we don't always get to have conversation. And conversation doesn't have to be, you know, berating somebody or being like, oh, you're right, I'm wrong, and everything. My opinion is completely different from somebody else's opinion, which can be completely different from the next. But we'll never understand anybody's vantage point unless we can have a starting point for the conversation, which I think is one of the reasons why I even dive into more illustrative and comic-esque kind of paintings, because it does catch you off guard. It is bright and colorful and whimsical, and it's not as jarring, I think, as some of these more stoic pieces, but it definitely is meant to draw you in to start having those conversations.
So, what current painting of yours is actually your portal?
So the piece I just finished, actually, I'm in the studio with it right now. At work. So you could see it in this background over
Sure.
here. I might go over there and give you a closer look.
Okay.
But this piece is called Curtain Call.
Okay.
And it is, don't know if I can switch it here, but if not, I will. Oh, there we go. Curtain Call.
Okay.
And this is a piece I just finished, but has not been debuted just yet. It will be soon for my Mad World series that's coming out. But I wanted to do a piece that started a conversation around the Confederate flag and around what it's like living as a Black person in America right now. So I have this modern day African American man pulling back the curtain of America to reveal what is behind the curtain. And you have this African American, or at this point, they didn't even have that title yet, they were just considered enslaved family with living inside the South. And you have, you know, the Confederate flag, which for some is a symbol of heritage, and for others, it's a symbol of racism and hate. You have the noose, and you have the hanging tree, and the gator bait, and recognition of stuff like alligator Alcatraz, because there are roots to those things. You also have the hands that are kind of pulling up from the ground. And this ties into my Mad World series that is coming up at Park Circle. So
Right.
there is a reason why the little boy is holding a golden egg, and a reason why we have a silhouette of a Mad Hatter. So that's kind of how I choose to tell various stories in an illustrative way. But that is the most recent story that I've just created.
And Ms. Harmon, what set of emotions has those paintings triggered for you?
um, a lot of emotions, I will say. So I don't live under a rock, so seeing all of the news and everything that's going on, and there's so much news and so much content that I can have content for days. Um, Sometimes it makes sense to figure out how I can symbolize it and create ways of symbolism to create a story and to start conversations. Because even with this piece here, I have my vantage point, but I also made sure to include, and I'll have um, paperwork that goes with it. There are those who see it as heritage. There are those who don't. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's have a conversation about what that looks like, because for me, that flag is extremely hurtful and has a deep history. Um, but I've also been around others, and I've been raised with others who do not see anything wrong with it whatsoever. So just creating some of these stories, I always understand that there is an other, and I create everything under the understanding that there is an other. There is an other opinion to what I have. There is another viewpoint to what I have. So again, I say everything in truth and in love. If we just act like nothing ever happened, like, yeah, nobody has an issue with the Confederate flag. Nobody has an issue with racism. Nobody has an issue with poverty in this country. It's not going to. It's not going to go away. So I like to think in the instance of everybody's opinion. My opinion is what's going to be painted, but it doesn't cancel out the conversation.
And what is your viewpoint of art now that you have actually created these paintings based off of what's going on currently in the world?
I've always felt that artists are storytellers and historians. Whether it's visual arts, music, dance, or whatnot, always felt like you can tell what is going on in a generation and in a point in history based off of the art that's created. When we think of, like what's it called, like disco and whatnot, we know that this is from the 70s. That paints the 70s. The fros and the bell bottoms paints the 70s, whereas like the jumpers, the plaid, the backwards hats, that paints the 90s. There's a lot of history that happens in this time period, but we know that era based on the style, based on the music, based on the art. And this is why when everything falls away, we are the historians. We will know what's going on at this time in this place. We don't know that we're living history. So artists create what is documented, so when our children look back at the history books, what was happening at this time? What were the conversations that were happening at this time? So I feel like we leave that documentation of what the era is.
This might be an off the beaten question, Ms. Harmon, but which one of your paintings describes you the best?
Probably, actually, I don't do many self portraits, but I do have one that is called The Birth of Assurance. And I actually did this one a few years ago, maybe about 2019, 2020.
Oh, yeah.
And it's an elongated piece of myself at the time. And I had started a series called the Harmonious Collection, where I was just doing a lot of gold and gold leaf and showing different ethnicities in a more regal light. And a lot of those pieces, I put them in very regal clothing. So I wanted to paint myself into this series, but I chose to paint myself as I was, not in any regal regalia and everything. Like at any given time, I'm in combat boots and jeans and a t-shirt and whatnot. So at the time, that was my style.
Sure.
Very much still kind of is. So I had on a black t-shirt, camouflage jacket, some jeans and combat boots, and I am just kind of, for me, it was the start of walking into the purpose. And that was really me deciding that I'm going to start doing this art. I'm going to start telling these stories and I'm going to start creating in this way. So that is entitled The Birth of Assurance, because that is me self-assuring myself like it is time to really start using my skills and start using my voice.
How do you hope to, in the next 5, 10 years, be able to continue to storytell with your art?
Oh, so two-sided question for me for that. I still want to expand on the series that I have, which is Mad World. What some don't necessarily know is that I create series in stages. So I might create a heavier series and then I need to breathe. So I'll create a series, but it might be a series that still focuses on diversity um, and inclusion and things of that nature, but it's going to be a lighter series. And then once I have enough of that, I'm going to dive back into the deeper things. So I kind of work like that. And for a long time, I kind of felt like, well, shoot, well, should I just do all of one thing? But I've come to understand, like, we're all multifaceted. I don't have just one interest. I'm not going to eat ice cream all the time, every day for the rest of my life because I love ice cream. I can have multiple things, and that's still part of my diet, still part of my aesthetic. So I intend to still create bodies of work that tour and that still have conversations, and some that make people laugh and some that make people cry, and some I still intend on doing a piece of just joy, like a series of just joy, because it is a mad world. Sometimes we just need something small and little that's going to make us happy. So I want to continue to exhibit. Um, I also I also write a lot,
Yes.
and I would love to put some of those writings to imagery, particularly about around faith and understanding like why things happen. Like a lot of the stuff, it's interesting because I have such a strong faith in Christ,
Yes.
and I am painting about some of the most heinous things that is happening in the world and in our history, and understanding that there is a higher power and that there is someone who controls it all and understands everything we're going through. I want to show those different sides of me. So I want to have the graphic novel. I want to have the art shows and the conversations, and they're all conversations that need to be had. They just might reach you in different ways and for different people.
And I'm probably going to ask a redundant question, but how equitable and sustainable will your art be in the next 5 to 10 years?
I hope it will be really equitable and sustainable. I am trying to make sure that all of my works are well preserved. I make sure that everything is done with professional quality paints and on good canvas and whatnot. I want shout out to SOA for this. They really taught us how to use professional quality long before I got into grad school and whatnot. Like they really uh, held on craftsmanship and how we presented our work. And I anticipate the work lasting for lifetimes, especially when treated well, and not just the tangible works, but also the conversations around the works. Even long before I found my aesthetic as an artist, back when I was in like middle school, I knew that I wanted to be able to say that when conversations are being had around the art of the 2020s or the 2030s and everything, that we would be able to show the pieces that I've done to say, hey, this is what was happening in history. So I'm praying for longevity for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 20 years, longevity in these conversations. And
Yes, indeed.
hopefully some change as well.
And you talk about those set of pieces that you obviously have created on your own, Miss Harmon. What do you observe when you're actually in a peaceful place creating this art?
Yeah. It's my happy place. It's when I feel the most at peace, even when I'm doing something light or when I'm doing something heavy, or no matter what, it feels like purpose. It feels like it's a place where I belong. Like I have done other jobs and do other things, but like I mentioned before, when God gives you a gift, you have to use it. Like, you have to use it. He gave it to you for a reason. So I am that one that, even like my family, my husband, my parents are just like, you need to go to bed. And I'm like, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, but I got to finish this one thing right here. Like, it's, you have to. And it is very much a happy place for me.
Wow, that is really, really amazing. Well, painter, illustrator, and storyteller Kenish Harmon, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.